Hello, esteemed gentlemen. The easiest person to manipulate is the one desperate to be understood. The hardest person to manipulate is the one who doesn't need your permission to exist. Here's a question that doesn't get asked often enough. What happens when a narcissist meets someone they simply can't read? Not someone louder, not someone richer, not someone trying to win. Just someone who refuses to play the game altogether. Psychologists have long observed that people who crave control become deeply uncomfortable around those whose behavior they cannot predict. When someone doesn't react the way the script demands, the script starts falling apart. And for a narcissist, that's not just frustrating, it's deeply unsettling. Now, before anyone starts polishing an imaginary Sigma Male of the Year trophy, let's be clear. This isn't about being invincible or magically immune to manipulation. It's about something far more fascinating. You see, narcissists don't judge people by who they are. They judge them by one question: can I figure you out, and can I influence you? The moment the answer becomes uncertain, their perception changes in ways most people never notice. That's where things get interesting. Because what a narcissist sees when they look at a Sigma Male isn't confidence, it isn't mystery, and it definitely isn't what social media keeps telling you. What they see is something far more disturbing. In today's video, we're pulling back the curtain on 12 surprising ways narcissistic people perceive Sigma Males, insights that go far beyond the usual clichés. Some of these perceptions are irrational. Some are almost laughably wrong, and a few are so accurate they'll make you rethink how power really works in human relationships. By the end of this video, you'll understand why sometimes the person saying the least is the one occupying the most space inside someone else's mind. Let's begin. Number 1. They mistake his emotional neutrality for hidden superiority. One of the biggest mistakes a narcissistic person makes is assuming that every calm person is secretly trying to prove they're better than everyone else. That's because narcissists often see the world through the lens of competition. In their mind, every conversation has a winner and a loser, every disagreement has a champion, and every silence must mean something. So when they meet a Sigma Male who stays emotionally steady, they don't see balance. They see someone quietly claiming the higher ground. The strange part is that the Sigma Male may not be thinking about superiority at all. He isn't trying to outshine anyone or make a dramatic statement. He simply doesn't feel the need to react to every opinion, defend every criticism, or chase every argument. His emotional control comes from being comfortable with himself, not from trying to make someone else feel small. But a narcissist rarely interprets it that way. Instead, they begin asking themselves uncomfortable questions. Why isn't he bothered? Why doesn't he need my approval? Why isn't he trying to impress me? Those unanswered questions slowly become assumptions, and those assumptions grow into resentment. Before long, they've convinced themselves that his calmness is actually concealed arrogance. This is where the misunderstanding becomes almost impossible to fix. The calmer the Sigma Male remains, the more convinced the narcissist becomes that he's looking down on them. Ironically, if he argued, defended himself, or became emotional, they would probably feel more comfortable because it would fit the pattern they understand. His refusal to play that role leaves them feeling off balance. The truth is, emotional neutrality isn't a declaration of superiority. It's often a sign of self-control. It means a person has learned that not every comment deserves an answer, not every insult deserves attention, and not every challenge deserves participation. To a healthy person, that's maturity. To a narcissist, it's an insult they can neither explain nor ignore. And sometimes the greatest threat to someone who feeds on emotional reactions isn't a louder opponent. It's someone who quietly refuses to make everything a battle. Number 2. They believe he's playing a longer game than they are. Narcissistic people are often suspicious by nature because they spend so much time calculating people. They pay attention to motives, hidden agendas, and opportunities to stay one step ahead. Since they constantly think in terms of strategy, they assume everyone else does too. That's why a Sigma male can become such a puzzle. When he doesn't reveal his intentions, rush to prove a point, or react to every situation, they don't see patience. They see a player who is quietly planning something bigger. What makes this so fascinating is that the Sigma male may not be planning anything at all. He simply takes his time. He listens more than he speaks. He waits before making decisions. He doesn't feel pressured to explain every move or announce every goal. For him, keeping certain thoughts private isn't a tactic. It's just how he lives. But a narcissist struggles to accept that. Instead, they begin searching for hidden meaning in ordinary behavior. If he declines an invitation, they wonder if he's sending a message. If he stays silent during an argument, they assume he's setting a trap. If he doesn't respond immediately, they believe he's trying to create suspense or gain leverage. Every simple action becomes part of an imaginary master plan they've created in their own mind. This is where their own thinking starts working against them. The more they analyze him, the more mysterious he becomes. They start expecting a calculated move around every corner, even when none exists. Ironically, they become trapped by the very game they believe he's playing. What unsettles them most is that they can't predict his next step. They're used to people acting out of emotion, ego, or the desire for approval. A Sigma male often acts according to his own timing, and that timing doesn't revolve around anyone else's expectations. To a narcissist, that kind of independence feels almost impossible to understand. Number 3. They view his silence as information. They aren't allowed to access. Silence has a strange effect on people who believe they should know everything. For a narcissist, not having access to someone's thoughts can feel less like a mystery and more like a personal insult. They're used to reading people, pulling information out of conversations, and collecting little details they can later use to strengthen their position. So when they meet a Sigma male who speaks only when he has something worth saying, they don't simply notice the silence, they become bothered by it. The Sigma male isn't trying to be secretive. He just doesn't feel the need to narrate his life. He doesn't reveal every plan before it happens, announce every success, or explain every decision. He understands that not every thought needs an audience, and not every opinion deserves a response. His quiet nature isn't about keeping people out. It's about protecting his peace. A narcissist sees something completely different. Instead of accepting that some people are naturally private, they start believing the silence is intentional. They assume he's holding back valuable information, testing people, or deciding who deserves access. Suddenly, his ordinary privacy becomes something much bigger in their imagination. That uncertainty starts to consume them. They begin paying closer attention to everything he says, hoping for clues. They replay conversations in their mind, searching for hidden meanings that were never there. Even small details become important because they're convinced there's a bigger story waiting to be uncovered. The irony is that the less the Sigma male tries to appear mysterious, the more mysterious he becomes. His silence creates empty spaces, and the narcissist rushes to fill those spaces with assumptions. Most of those assumptions are completely wrong, but once they've convinced themselves there's a hidden message, they stop looking for the truth and start chasing their own theories. Number 4. They feel strangely unimportant around him. One of the hardest experiences for a narcissistic person is realizing they are not the center of someone's emotional world. They often expect their words, opinions, and actions to leave a lasting mark on everyone they meet. Whether it's through praise, criticism, charm, or drama, they want to know they have influenced the room. It's how they measure their importance. But when they encounter a Sigma male, that expectation often falls flat. The Sigma male doesn't build his day around other people's moods. If someone compliments him, he appreciates it, but doesn't become dependent on it. If someone criticizes him unfairly, he considers it without letting it define him. He doesn't spend hours trying to win people over or prove anyone wrong. Once an interaction is over, he simply moves on with his life. To most people, that's emotional stability. To a narcissist, it feels like being erased. They begin noticing something they rarely experience. Their jokes don't land the way they expected. Their attempts to impress don't create admiration. Their subtle digs fail to trigger defensiveness. Even dramatic exits or attention-grabbing behavior seem to produce little more than a calm acknowledgement before life carries on. That lack of emotional impact feels deeply unsettling. The uncomfortable truth is that narcissists often mistake influence for importance. If they can make someone angry, jealous, guilty, or obsessed, they believe they matter. So when none of those reactions appear, they don't conclude that the Sigma male is emotionally healthy. They conclude that something must be wrong with him, or worse, that he simply doesn't see them as significant. That thought can quietly eat away at them. Instead of accepting that not everyone responds the same way, they often try harder. They become louder, more charming, more critical, or more dramatic, hoping something will finally leave a mark. But the harder they push, the more obvious it becomes that they are chasing a reaction instead of building a real connection. Number 5. They suspect he's quietly judging them. Even when he isn't, one of the most overlooked habits of a narcissistic person is that they constantly evaluate everyone around them. They compare appearances, success, confidence, intelligence, popularity, and even the smallest social details. They instinctively rank people, deciding who is useful, who is beneath them, and who might become a threat. After doing this for so long, they begin to believe everyone else must be doing the exact same thing. That's why a Sigma male's quiet nature can make them surprisingly uneasy. When he listens more than he talks, they don't assume he's simply paying attention. They assume he's studying them. When he doesn't interrupt, they believe he's silently picking apart everything they say. Even a thoughtful pause before answering can feel like hidden criticism. In their minds, his calm expression becomes evidence that he's reached a conclusion about them. The truth is often much simpler. A Sigma male usually doesn't waste energy judging every person he meets. He's more interested in observing patterns than attacking personalities. He notices actions, consistency, and character over time. He doesn't rush to label people because he understands that first impressions are often incomplete. His silence isn't filled with criticism. More often than not, it's filled with patience. But projection has a powerful way of changing reality. Because narcissists spend so much time judging others, they struggle to believe someone isn't doing the same to them. They end up hearing accusations that were never spoken, and sensing disapproval that was never intended. Their own mindset creates an invisible conversation that exists only in their imagination. Ironically, this can make them reveal more than they planned. Trying to defend themselves against judgments that don't exist, they begin over-explaining, boasting, or seeking reassurance. They become eager to prove their worth before anyone has questioned it. Without realizing it, they expose the very insecurity they were trying to hide. Number 6. They think he knows more than he actually says. Few things make a narcissistic person more uneasy than someone who doesn't reveal everything they know. They're used to conversations where people quickly show their cards, sharing opinions, correcting others, proving how much they know, or rushing to display their intelligence. It gives them something to work with. Every word becomes another clue about a person's strengths, weaknesses, and intentions. A Sigma male often breaks that pattern without even trying. He doesn't feel the need to speak just because there's silence. If he already understands something, he doesn't always announce it. If he notices a contradiction, he may let it pass instead of turning it into a debate. He chooses his words carefully, not because he's hiding secrets, but because he believes not every thought deserves to be spoken. To a narcissist, that restraint is almost impossible to understand. Instead of seeing self-control, they see hidden knowledge. They begin wondering what he has figured out. Did he notice the inconsistency in their story? Did he see through the exaggerated confidence? Does he know something everyone else missed? Questions like these start building inside their mind, and with every unanswered question, their curiosity slowly turns into anxiety. Ironically, the Sigma male may have forgotten the conversation while the narcissist is still replaying it days later. A brief glance, a small smile, or a quiet pause becomes something they analyze over and over, convinced it carried a secret meaning. The less he explains himself, the more convinced they become that he's keeping valuable information locked away. This misunderstanding grows because narcissists often believe knowledge is power. If someone isn't using what they know, they assume it's being saved for the perfect moment. They cannot imagine that a person might simply have no interest in showing off or exposing every observation. The real power isn't that the Sigma male knows everything, it's that he's comfortable not proving anything. He doesn't measure his intelligence by how often he speaks, and he doesn't need constant recognition for what he notices. That quiet confidence creates an unsettling illusion. In the narcissist's eyes, the man who says the least somehow appears to know the most. And sometimes the secrets they fear aren't hidden in his mind at all. They're hidden in the stories they keep telling themselves. Number 7. They experience him as an unfinished puzzle. Narcissistic people like certainty. They want to know exactly who they're dealing with because certainty gives them confidence, and confidence gives them control. They pay close attention to habits, emotional reactions, fears and desires, quietly building a mental profile of every person they meet. Once they believe they've figured someone out, they know which buttons to push and which words are most likely to get the response they want. Then they meet a Sigma male. Suddenly, the process stops working. He doesn't react the same way every time. He isn't trying to impress anyone one day and seeking approval the next. He doesn't overshare his dreams, advertise his weaknesses, or make emotional decisions that are easy to predict. Every time the narcissist thinks they've finally figured him out, he calmly does something that doesn't fit the image they've created. That is deeply frustrating. The Sigma male becomes an unfinished puzzle with pieces that never seem to lock into place. Every conversation offers a clue, but not enough to complete the picture. Every interaction answers one question while creating 3 new ones. Instead of understanding him better over time, the narcissist often feels even more confused. What makes this especially unsettling is that most people naturally reveal themselves through repetition. Their habits become obvious, their emotional triggers become familiar, and their personalities become easier to predict. A Sigma male doesn't intentionally hide these things, but he also doesn't put them on display. He lets people discover them naturally, if they ever do at all. A narcissist isn't comfortable with that kind of uncertainty. An incomplete profile feels like unfinished business. They keep observing, testing, and analyzing, convinced that one more conversation will finally unlock the answer. But the harder they search, the more they realize they may never have complete access to who he really is. The irony is that the Sigma male isn't trying to be complicated. He's simply comfortable keeping parts of himself private until trust is earned. He doesn't hand people a complete map of his mind after a few conversations, and that's exactly what makes him impossible for a narcissist to file away. In a world where they expect everyone to fit neatly into categories, he remains the one person whose final piece always seems to be missing. Number 8. They mistake his boundaries for personal rejection. One of the quickest ways to confuse a narcissistic person is to set a boundary without anger, guilt, or apology. They're often used to people bending their schedules, changing their opinions, or sacrificing their comfort to keep the peace. So when a Sigma male calmly says no, protects his time, or refuses to cross his own limits, the narcissist rarely sees it as a healthy boundary. They see it as a personal rejection. That misunderstanding changes everything. The Sigma male isn't trying to send a hidden message. He isn't punishing anyone or trying to make someone feel unimportant. He's simply clear about what he will and won't accept. If he needs time alone, he takes it. If he doesn't want to join every gathering, he declines without inventing excuses. If a conversation becomes disrespectful, he leaves instead of staying just to avoid making someone uncomfortable. To him, boundaries are normal. To a narcissist, they feel deeply personal. Instead of thinking, he has standards, they think, he must have something against me. They begin searching for reasons. Was it something they said? Is he trying to embarrass them? Is he withholding attention on purpose? A simple decision becomes a complicated story filled with assumptions that have little to do with reality. This reaction happens because narcissists often interpret other people's choices through the lens of themselves. If someone creates distance, they assume it's a statement about their value. They struggle with the idea that another person's boundary can exist without being an attack. The Sigma male doesn't spend hours explaining himself to make everyone feel better. He understands that boundaries lose their strength when they constantly require permission or approval. He knows that saying yes to everything eventually means saying no to your own peace. That quiet confidence can be incredibly unsettling to someone who expects access without limits. The greatest irony is that healthy boundaries are not walls built to keep people out. They're doors that open for respect and close on disrespect. The Sigma male understands that difference. The narcissist often doesn't. So instead of recognizing maturity, they mistake self-respect for rejection, and in doing so, they create the very distance they were trying to avoid. Number 9. They see his lack of self-promotion as suspicious. In a world where many people feel pressured to advertise themselves, a Sigma male often does the exact opposite. He doesn't constantly talk about his achievements, remind people how busy he is, or look for opportunities to prove his worth. If he accomplishes something meaningful, he lets the results speak for themselves. To most people, that's simply confidence without the noise. To a narcissist, however, that kind of behavior doesn't make sense. They're used to believing that value must be displayed. If someone is talented, they should talk about it. If someone is successful, they should make sure everyone knows. If someone has influence, they should use it to gain admiration. So when they meet a Sigma male who isn't interested in promoting himself, they become suspicious. Their first thought usually isn't, "He's humble." It's, "What is he hiding?" They begin creating explanations that have little to do with reality. Maybe he's secretly more powerful than he appears. Maybe he's pretending to be modest so people will admire him even more. Maybe he's waiting for the perfect moment to reveal his true status. In their minds, there has to be a strategy, because they struggle to believe someone can be comfortable without constant recognition. The irony is that the Sigma male often isn't trying to create mystery at all. He simply doesn't believe every success needs an announcement. He understands that genuine confidence doesn't depend on applause. He'd rather spend his energy improving himself than convincing everyone else that he's impressive. That attitude quietly disrupts the narcissist's way of thinking. They expect confidence to be loud, visible, and impossible to miss. When they encounter someone whose confidence is calm and almost invisible, They don't know how to process it. The silence feels unnatural because it doesn't match the behavior they've come to expect. Over time, that suspicion can turn into obsession. They watch him more closely, waiting for the mask to slip or the hidden agenda to reveal itself. But nothing dramatic happens. The Sigma male continues living exactly as he always has, with no need to broadcast every victory. And that's what keeps the narcissist unsettled. They cannot understand how someone can possess quiet confidence without secretly craving the spotlight, because deep down, they cannot imagine feeling valuable without an audience. Number 10, they feel like their social gravity doesn't work. Some people have a powerful need to be the center of attention. They expect conversations to shift toward them, opinions to revolve around them, and the emotional energy in the room to follow wherever they go. For a narcissistic person, this isn't just a preference. It often becomes part of how they measure their importance. If people are constantly reacting to them, they feel significant. If they aren't, something feels wrong. Then they meet a Sigma male. What surprises them isn't that he ignores them. It's that he doesn't naturally orbit around them. He listens when there's something worth hearing, speaks when he has something worth saying, and carries on with his day without treating anyone as the center of his universe. His attention isn't handed out because someone demands it. It's earned through character and mutual respect. That completely changes the dynamic. The narcissist may tell stories designed to impress, make bold statements to dominate the conversation, or subtly steer every discussion back toward themselves. These tactics usually work because many people respond automatically. Some admire them, some argue with them, and others simply go along with the flow. The Sigma male often does neither. He doesn't compete for the spotlight, but he doesn't feed it either. If the conversation becomes all about ego, he quietly loses interest. If someone is fishing for admiration, he doesn't rush to hand it over. He remains present without becoming emotionally pulled into the performance. That lack of automatic attention feels strangely unfamiliar to a narcissist. It's as though the force that usually pulls people toward them has suddenly stopped working. The room may still be full of people, but one person refuses to revolve around the same emotional center. What unsettles them even more is that the Sigma male isn't making a statement. He isn't trying to embarrass anyone or prove a point. He's simply living according to his own values instead of someone else's need for validation. And that's what makes his presence so powerful. A person who cannot be emotionally pulled by status, charm, or attention creates a different kind of influence. Without raising his voice or demanding recognition, he quietly reminds everyone in the room that real confidence doesn't revolve around being noticed. Sometimes it revolves around not needing to be. Number 11. They can't decide whether he's an ally or a threat. One of the most frustrating things for a narcissistic person is not knowing where they stand with someone. They prefer people to be easy to read. You're either on their side, against them, useful to them, or irrelevant. Those categories help them decide how to approach every relationship. But when they meet a Sigma male, those familiar labels suddenly stop working. The Sigma male doesn't rush to call someone a friend, but he doesn't rush to make enemies either. He believes trust should be earned over time, not handed out because someone is charming or confident. He watches how people behave when they have nothing to gain, how they treat others behind closed doors, and whether their words continue to match their actions. Until then, he remains respectful but careful. That patience creates uncertainty. A narcissist may try to win him over with compliments, favors, or shared interests, expecting quick loyalty in return. When that doesn't happen, they become confused. Is he being cautious because he's intelligent? Is he suspicious? Is he waiting for the right moment to challenge them? Or is he quietly becoming an ally? They can't tell. That uncertainty becomes mentally exhausting because narcissists often rely on certainty to stay in control. They want to know who supports them and who might stand in their way. A Sigma male offers neither immediate trust nor obvious opposition. He simply observes, listens, and takes his time. In doing so, he becomes impossible to place on the mental map the narcissist has drawn. What's interesting is that the Sigma male isn't trying to create tension. He's simply unwilling to let first impressions make permanent decisions. He understands that people reveal their true character through consistency, not charisma. That's why he values patterns over promises. To a narcissist, however, that approach feels dangerous. They cannot predict which direction he'll eventually take, and unpredictability is something they deeply dislike. They'd rather face an open enemy than someone who refuses to be rushed into loyalty. Number 12. They quietly fear. He cannot be psychologically owned. There is one thing a narcissistic person wants more than admiration, and that's influence. They want to feel that they can shape how someone thinks, steer how someone feels, or pull invisible strings without the other person even noticing. It doesn't always happen through obvious manipulation. Sometimes it's through praise, guilt, attention, criticism, or creating emotional highs and lows. The goal is the same: to occupy space inside another person's mind. A Sigma male disrupts that pattern in a way that feels deeply unsettling. He appreciates kindness without becoming dependent on it. He listens to criticism without letting it define him. He can enjoy someone's company without feeling the need to revolve his life around them. His decisions are guided more by his own principles than by someone else's approval or disapproval. That makes him unusually difficult to pull into emotional games. A narcissist notices this sooner than most people. They may try different approaches, expecting one of them to work. Charm doesn't create blind loyalty. Flattery doesn't inflate his ego. Silent treatment doesn't produce panic. Even subtle attempts to provoke jealousy or guilt often fail to change his direction. It's not because he's emotionless. It's because he refuses to hand someone else the steering wheel to his inner life. That is a frightening discovery for someone who measures relationships by influence. The more they realize they cannot emotionally own him, the more uncomfortable they become. They begin to understand that his choices aren't controlled by fear of rejection, the need for validation, or the pressure to please. He can walk away from unhealthy situations without feeling like he's losing himself, and that kind of freedom is incredibly difficult to manipulate. Ironically, the Sigma male isn't trying to win a battle of power. In many cases, he doesn't even know one is taking place. He's simply protecting his peace, staying true to his values, and refusing to trade his self-respect for acceptance. And that's the brutal truth. The greatest threat to a narcissist isn't someone who fights for control. It's someone who cannot be quietly controlled in the first place. When a person realizes that their mind, their values, and their identity are not for sale, they become something a narcissist struggles to understand, and even more struggles to possess. The biggest lesson from all of this isn't that Sigma males are impossible to manipulate, or that narcissistic people are unbeatable masterminds. Human behavior is far more complicated than that. The real takeaway is that people who rely on control often struggle the most when they encounter someone who isn't driven by the need for approval, attention, or emotional games. What unsettles a narcissist isn't loud confidence or endless confrontation. It's meeting someone whose self-worth isn't sitting in someone else's hands. A person who doesn't need to win every argument, explain every decision, or seek validation becomes incredibly difficult to predict. And when predictability disappears, so does the illusion of control. That doesn't mean life becomes free of difficult people. It means your greatest protection has never been having the perfect comeback or the cleverest strategy. It's knowing who you are, staying true to your values, and refusing to let someone else's behavior decide your peace of mind. If you recognized some of these patterns, don't use them to label everyone you meet. Use them as reminders to value emotional maturity, healthy boundaries, and relationships built on mutual respect instead of manipulation. The strongest people aren't the ones who control others. They're the ones who have learned to control themselves. So here's a question for you. Which of these 20 perceptions surprised you the most? And have you ever met someone who seemed genuinely unsettled simply because they couldn't figure you out? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this video and want more deep, thought-provoking content that goes beyond the usual clichés, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. If this video gave you a new way of looking at human behavior, give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Every like, comment, and share helps this channel reach more people who enjoy meaningful conversations about psychology, self-mastery, and personal growth. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.